Hello and welcome to Asia Gaming Brief's Face-to-Face series. Today I'm talking with Heather Scheibenstock. She is an executive director with SenSen Networks. We're going to be talking about the expected changes in computer technology over the next 5 years. It's a subject that she's going to be exploring further as a moderator on a panel at the ASEAN Gaming Summit. Heather, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. You're sitting down in Australia, so let's just kick off by telling us exactly what the situation is down there. What kind of demand is casinos seeing? Is it strong?
Yes, so since the pandemic, I think the casinos are recovering quite well. So obviously in Australia, each of the states had closed down during the pandemic and actually been locked away from each other. So now business is really starting to drive again. But of course, they've had a number of things here in Australia. So between the pandemic, then of course you've had our inquiries and royal commissions, which has had a large impact on the VIP business. And then there's economic conditions and really labour shortages. That's another part that's impacting the casinos and the hospitality industry as a whole.
Is that getting, we heard about that a little while ago, is that getting any better now as we come out of the pandemic, or is it still as bad as ever?
Yeah, still a lot of places cannot operate at 100% yet. So, I think there's a few things that have got to change and people have got to get used to travelling around. I mean, we were used to having large amounts of people coming into Australia, backpackers, travellers, large immigration was a big part of Australia's growth. So I think people have to get comfortable with that again.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And the regulations, I won't go into the regulatory inquiries, I won't go into those too much, but from where you're sitting, have they had a big impact on public opinion towards casinos and gambling in Australia?
I think, public opinion in Australia, the casinos have generally not had a great time at all. It hasn't changed public opinion too much. But, we've just recently had banking royal commissions into the disability services and other sectors. So royal commissions are not new to us. But it really is how the behaviours are coming out of those that's going to make a difference and an impact. In the US, you have a very supportive public market for gaming. And I think in Australia, it's always sort of been treated as potentially suspicious activity really in the gaming sector. So there are always steps to come out of that. And of course, everybody who's in the sector knows how heavily regulated and how well it can operate.
We were going to, our primary focus to chat today is going to be about technology in gambling. Obviously, we've already got a lot of new technology in the past few years. How has the pandemic accelerated things?
So I use an example that, over that last 2.5 years, I did not take any cash out of the bank. I realised I didn't need any cash to operate. And of course, what we have is casinos have been such a heavily cash-based environment. So I see that the changes that we have now, so with labour shortages, the need for technology has really, and frictionless transactions in casinos has really come to the forefront. So I see this as a time really over the next 5 years that there will be a much faster transition to new technology than there has in the last 40 years. So that's even in forms of AI and camera technology, so for bet recognition, facial recognition, whether it be RFID as well. And then, of course, ticketless, cashless or tickets on the table, for the whole range of technology, and I really think that that's going to move quite quickly now.
Why do you think casinos have lagged?
So generally, depending on the market, they've been able to continue to operate, and people were quite willing to bring cash along, take cash out, or be able to spend. And I think it's that idea about change. So there are certain elements where the industry can change and adapt very quickly. And then there are other sort of traditional sides of the industry where they don't change much. It's just the way it's always been done. And so even if I look at things like rating a customer at a table, I mean, for a long time it was a pen and paper. And in some markets, that's what they're still doing, a one-to-one rating of a customer. And now you have all of this technology that can read your bets or know who the customer is. And you don't even have to hand the card to the player. It can be a frictionless environment. And I think as we're realising now, and even potentially if there, as staff shortages and things like that, you can still reliably rate or know your customer and use this technology to all its advantages and still have ways to verify and deliver a better service. So instead of it being such a transactional service as it has been in the past, you can then deliver good customer service to the customer.
Where would you say these technologies have seen the most adoption? Where are they more advanced?
Well, so for instance, cashless in your restaurants and things like that have been cashless for a long time. There were carded ways to do your transactions through slot machines, electronic gaming. So it's generally been in the tables area that has been slower to adopt some of these technologies. So I'm excited to see that some of those changes are happening really all around the world now.
That's interesting. Do you think, you said you think that this is going to accelerate. Obviously, as technology has been rolled out around the world, some of the least developed places jumped 2 steps ahead. If you see what I mean, they went from, they didn't have landlines and phones. They went straight to mobiles and things like that. Do you see perhaps that kind of thing happening across Asia?
Yes, I think it's really going to be market driven. And, you've got markets where you have a lot of customers. You've got markets which have more of a mass gaming and less VIP. And then you've got markets that have restrictions on the number of tables. So I think it's often in the cases where there's higher regulation or other restrictions where they're going to adapt and adopt the technology quicker. So it can be in some environments where it's a new environment coming in. So new casinos, greenfield casinos are always an opportunity to embrace new technology. But it's also those environments that are finding that they've got a number of other restrictions. So how are they going to operate, to be the most productive, plus keep their customers happy and know their customer? So those are the ones who are really going to adopt.
You mentioned facial recognition a moment ago. Obviously, that's not always without its critics, is it? How do you see it being incorporated seamlessly?
Well, many casinos have been using a type of facial recognition in their surveillance for many, many years. So I remember in the early 2000s going into casinos in Macau, and they were using different types of facial recognition. Not always really successful, but they have been trying to. So some of the controversies around privacy, obviously, but then there are also opportunities to, ensure that, things like anti-money laundering come to full force so that you're able to pick up where incidents may be happening and be able to get the information that you need about a customer, knowing that several transactions have happened. So there's going to be sort of real opportunity. I think the regulations that are in Europe at the moment are probably something that's going to be embraced about with other countries. So in Australia, they're currently talking about the facial recognition technology regulation and how they're going to do that. So I think companies which are making sure that they're at the forefront of regulation and meeting all of the requirements and understanding the privacy issues, they're really it's going to be valuable to protecting customers as well as casinos.
And what particular area do you think, in terms of the range of products that you're looking at right now, what do you see as some of the most exciting opportunities?
Well, I couldn't so, not avoid saying that the camera technology for bet recognition. So it's very exciting how accurate you can get your bet recognition. Easy to adapt to tables, so you can have low-cost solutions. So every environment can pick up on that camera technology. So I think that's some of the key changes. Obviously, things like cashless opportunities in casinos too. So embracing that technology and making sure you're meeting regulations and understanding and knowing your customer. So I think that's probably the two that I'm really looking forward to seeing rolled out.
Right. And in terms of those, the efficiencies, improvement in efficiencies, can you give us an example of what the camera technology can do compared with the physical?
Yeah, so if you're recognising the bet value in each box, you can rate your customers accurately. You have a chance because you've got live real-time betting, so that you can use your yielding structures. So you might be using a company that's got yielding and productivity measures, and you actually have live data that you're not putting any manual entry in. So that's another opportunity. And then, of course, it's meeting regulations about knowing your customer, recognising how long a customer might be playing in your facility, and harm minimisation measures. So there's several different avenues which will assist in really generating a better profitability for casinos, and also meeting the regulatory compliance that they need.
Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. You're going to be moderating a panel at ASEAN on some of these subjects, so we look forward to getting further insight from yourself and your fellow panelists.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Please join me every Friday for Asia Gaming Brief's face-to-face series with thought leaders in Asia's gaming industry.